Imagine this. You're lying in a hospital bed, fighting for your life, while your best friend quietly slips into your home, into your children's routines, and into your husband's arms. Tell me, what would you do if you came back and found your place already taken? I need you to understand something before anything else. While I was in the hospital fighting for my life, she was quietly moving into it. Not with drama, not with fireworks, with a soft smile, a gentle "let me help you." The kind of help that slowly replaces you before you even notice you're fading. At first, I truly believed she was just being a friend. Harmless, supportive, sweet. But then something shifted. She stopped feeling like someone filling a temporary gap, and started feeling like someone who wasn't planning to leave at all. By the time I realized what was happening, she was already reaching into parts of my life I never imagined were vulnerable, touching things that were mine, inch by inch claiming pieces of me I never thought I could lose. And let me tell you right now, this story, it isn't just about betrayal. It's about what it takes to stand back up after being pushed out of the life you built with your own hands. It's about returning, not to beg, not to apologize, but to reclaim what was mine from the very beginning. But before everything fell apart, my life looked like this. 6 months earlier, if you'd asked me how I was doing, I would have smiled a real warm smile and said, "Yeah, I'm happy." Not glamorous happy, not Instagram happy, just the quiet, steady kind. The kind that hides inside ordinary routines and makes simple moments feel safe. We lived in a simple 2-story house in the suburbs. Nothing special. The carpet still had a giant orange juice stain we kept promising to replace for 5 years. Our old car needed 3 attempts before the engine bothered to wake up. But it was ours. And we had our kids, my 2 tiny planets keeping my whole world in orbit. Chloe was 8. With wild red curls and eyes that held more emotion than an 8-year-old should ever have to carry. Ethan was 4. Pure movement, pure joy, pure dinosaur roars at 6 in the morning. Every sunrise started with him climbing onto my bed, whisper shouting, "Mommy, the sun is rising. We have to see it." And Daniel, my husband. He was the steady ground beneath my feet. Gentle, patient, predictable in the best ways. He forgot trash day, bought the wrong yogurt every time, and still wrapped his arms around me at night just to make me laugh. Our life wasn't glamorous. Target runs, cheap coffee, donuts for the kids, laundry mountains, Netflix humming in the background. Evenings where silence felt comfortable instead of empty. Then there was Megan, my best friend since school. Chloe's godmother. The person I messaged about everything, good news, bad haircuts, stupid memes. She'd been woven into my life for so long that her presence felt like a constant. Sometimes, in the middle of that cozy, messy rhythm, I'd get this tiny whisper of fear. Like happiness was a pendulum, and if it swung too far toward me, something dark was waiting on the backswing. I always brushed it off, as I loved my life. Its flaws, its noise, its routines. But a crack was already forming. I just couldn't see it yet. It began with small things. A lingering fatigue. A heaviness I blamed on everything except what it was. Work, kids, weather, stress. By lunchtime, it felt like someone had unplugged me. At night, I'd fall asleep on the floor next to Ethan's crib before I even finished his story. And that was only the beginning. One afternoon at work, everything suddenly went fuzzy. My vision blurred, the room tilted, and I grabbed the edge of my desk just to keep myself upright. For a moment, it felt like the floor was pulling me under. I laughed it off, the way you do when you're scared and pretending you're not, blaming breakfast, stress, anything but the truth. But when Megan picked me up after work, her silence said everything. Her fingers clenched the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. "You look worn out," she said quietly. "Have you seen a doctor recently?" I waved it off. "It's just the season. Ethan's up all night. I'm fine." And for half a heartbeat I almost believed myself. Almost. But deep down I knew. This wasn't being tired. This was my body begging for help. Every step like walking across thin, cracking ice, hoping it wouldn't shatter beneath me. Still, I didn't rush to a doctor. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. As long as no one said the words out loud, I could pretend nothing was wrong. You can blame anything, allergies, stress, lack of sleep, as long as it isn't something real. And life wasn't slowing down. Chloe's school talent show was coming up. She'd chosen part of your world. And every night we practiced. Her voice was small but steady, full of this pure sincerity that made my chest tighten. How will I look on stage, Mom? What if I get embarrassed? She whispered. You'll be the most beautiful mermaid this town has ever seen, I told her, and meant it. Meanwhile, Ethan was knee-deep in his dinosaur phase, stomping, roaring, lecturing me on prehistoric teeth like a tiny paleontologist. Every night he placed his stuffed T-Rex, Rex, on my chest and announced, Rex thinks Mom should sleep more. I always laughed, but inside a knot was tightening. Stairs left me breathless. Standing too long made my legs burn. One morning I woke with my fingers swollen like I'd been clenching fists all night. Daniel noticed. Maybe not the whole truth, but enough to be scared. One evening, after I literally fell asleep at the dinner table, he brushed my hair back and whispered, Hannah, maybe it's time you saw a doctor? I couldn't answer. Fear pinned me in place. For the first time I knew this wasn't exhaustion. This was something deeper. Something darker. Like my body was whispering, you're not in control anymore. I am. So I finally made an appointment for Friday. The day before, Megan arrived with comfort stacked in her arms, coffee, warm cinnamon rolls, new dinosaur toys for Ethan. We sat on the porch while the kids ran circles around us. You look pale, she said, studying me. Are you sure you're okay? I'm going tomorrow, I sighed. They'll run tests. It's just scary. She squeezed my hand. Firm, reassuring, familiar. I'm with you. If you want, I'll go. No matter what happens, I'm here. For you, for Daniel, for the kids. I'm not going anywhere. And I believed her. Why wouldn't I? Back then I had no reason to think otherwise. Not yet. The next morning Daniel offered to come with me, but I told him no. I wanted the day to look normal for the kids. Even though nothing inside me felt normal anymore. Chloe still had school. Ethan still had his kingdom of dinosaurs waiting at home. And I kept repeating the same lie in my head. It's probably iron deficiency, stress, something simple, a vitamin, a nap. You're fine. But the moment I sat in that exam room and saw the look on the doctor's face, my stomach dropped. I knew. Everything was about to change. The room felt too quiet, like sound had slipped out through the door. I sat across from Dr. Lawson, a man whose whole face looked shaped by years of giving bad news. My chart lay open on the desk, numbers, markers, words I didn't want to understand. He read through them slowly while I gripped the armrest to steady my breath. Miss Porter, he finally said, we're going to do everything in our power, but this requires a very serious approach. My voice cracked before it even formed. Is it cancer? He shook his head gently. No, but it isn't simple. You have systemic lupus erythematosus, a chronic autoimmune disease. The words floated in the air like they belonged to someone else. Your body is attacking itself, he explained. The inflammation you're feeling, that's your immune system turning on your joints, your blood, even your organs. I stared at him, frozen. Didn't feel real. It felt like I was watching myself from outside the room. But, can you treat it? I asked. We can manage it, he said. Slow the progression. But there's no cure. And some organs are already affected, your liver, your lungs. The numbers aren't good. His voice blurred into a distant hum. What happens now? I whispered. He slid a folder toward me. Hospitalization. 2 to 3 months. We'll begin an experimental therapy. It shows promise, but it's intense. You'll need to commit fully. 2 to 3 months. Away from Chloe's talent show. Away from Ethan's dinosaur mornings. Away from everything that made me feel like myself. I don't remember leaving his office. One moment I was sitting in that suffocating room. The next I was in my car, staring at the steering wheel like it belonged to a stranger. My ears buzzed. My head felt heavy. And I couldn't even begin to imagine telling Daniel. Outside, a woman loaded groceries into her trunk while her daughter laughed about ice cream. Normal life. A life I suddenly felt like I was slipping out of. Tears slid down my face before I even felt them. I thought about calling Megan, but my hands wouldn't move. I thought about calling my mom, but grief swept through me. She'd been gone since I was a teenager. For a moment I wanted to run from all of it. Then my phone rang. Daniel. I wiped my face, inhaled shakily, and answered, "Hey, sweetheart. How's it going?" His voice was warm, familiar, like a blanket. "It's fine," I lied. I didn't even know why. Maybe because saying the truth out loud would make it real. "How are the kids?" I asked. He laughed softly. "Ethan made a sandball and insists it's a meteorite. Chloe's rehearsing her song for the 125th time. I think my left ear might fall off." I managed a tiny laugh. "You okay, hon?" he asked, concern rising. "Yes," I lied again. "Just tired. I might take a walk before I come home." "All right," he murmured. "Don't stay out long." I ordered pizza. The call ended, and I sat there, alone in a parked car, holding a truth that felt too heavy for my hands and too sharp for my heart. And this was only the beginning. We hung up, and I just sat there, letting the diagnosis settle over me like a storm cloud I couldn't outrun. Heavy. Inevitable. I don't know how long I stayed in that car, an hour, maybe two. When I finally drove, I didn't go home. I ended up at a quiet park instead, sitting on a worn wooden bench, watching kids run across the playground while their parents cheered like life was simple. And in that moment, one truth hit me hard. I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Not in front of them. But another truth followed just as fast. I wasn't going to get through this alone. That night, after Daniel drifted off and the kids were asleep, I slipped into the kitchen, closed the door, and called Megan. The moment she answered, I couldn't speak. Just shaking breaths. Just tears. "Hannah? Hey, what happened?" Her voice sharpened instantly. "I have lupus," I whispered. "They're admitting me for a long time." There was a heartbeat of silence. Then, "Don't worry. I'll take care of everything." Back then I thought she meant me. I had no idea she meant something else entirely. Packing a suitcase felt impossible. Even on my honeymoon, I'd never agonized like this. Every folded shirt felt like a piece of my life I was being forced to step away from. I wasn't preparing for a trip. I was walking out of my home, from my family, my babies, from a version of myself I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. "Why do you have to go to the hospital, Mom?" Chloe climbed onto the bed beside me, her voice barely cracking through my thoughts. She was only 8, but she understood too much. Lying to her felt wrong. "Sweetheart," I said, brushing her hair back. "Mommy's a little sick. The doctors want to help me get strong again, so I can run with you in the park. So I can bake you cookies you'll call too vanilla." That earned a small laugh, thin but bright. "Will you be far away?" she asked. "A little," I admitted. "But Dad will bring you to see me. I'll call every day." She twisted the blanket in her hands. "You're not gonna leave us forever, right?" That didn't break me. It split something open inside me. I pulled her close. "Never. Even if I'm far, even if I'm not here at night, I'm always your mom. And I will fight to stay with you. Always." She nodded, wiped her face, and slipped off the bed. Ethan didn't ask big questions. He marched in with his dinosaur, held it up to my face, and said, "Mom, you won't forget my dinosaur, right?" "No, baby," I smiled even through the ache inside me. "Rex is coming with me." So I placed his soft, worn-out T-Rex on top of my folded clothes. And when I zipped the suitcase shut, something inside me cracked straight down the middle. The next morning, Megan arrived early to help carry my bags. She hugged me a little too tightly, like she didn't want to let go. "We're all here for you," she murmured. "Me, Daniel, the kids, all of us. Everything's under control. Just focus on getting better." And I nodded because I wanted to believe her. Maybe I needed to believe her. Before we left, Daniel walked me to the car. Neither of us rushed. We held on to those quiet seconds like we were memorizing them. I glanced around, Chloe's crooked drawing taped to the window, Ethan's tiny bike waiting on the porch. My life still warm, still alive, and I was stepping away from it. "I'm scared," I whispered. Daniel kissed my forehead. "You're the strongest woman I know," he whispered. "We'll be okay. Just hang on." I squeezed his hand and climbed into the car. The hospital room they assigned me was painfully plain. White walls, dull floors, a stiff bed, a flickering TV, and that antiseptic smell that's too clean to be comforting. But the worst part wasn't the room. It was the silence. The kind that traps you alone with your thoughts, your breathing, your fear. The kind that makes each drip of the 4 feel like a ticking clock. At night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to distant footsteps, machine beeps, oxygen whispers, the soundtrack of a life that wasn't mine anymore. I texted Daniel. He said the kids were asleep. Ethan wanted a bedtime story. Chloe couldn't close her eyes. And I lay there, wondering how everything had changed so fast. And what was coming next. If only I knew. They miss you, Daniel wrote. But we're holding on. I closed my eyes and let the tears slip quietly into my pillow. Not the loud, shaking kind. Just enough to ease the weight in my chest. This was my new normal. A stiff hospital bed, joints that felt ancient, constant fatigue, and an ache that didn't come from the illness at all, but from being away from the 2 little people who needed me most. I kept telling myself I had to stay strong. If I completely unraveled, who would they lean on? Still, somewhere deep inside, something tugged at me. It wasn't just me that was changing. Something was shifting back home too. I just didn't know yet how much. The first days in the hospital felt like being dropped into another universe. You don't really live there, you just float. From 4 to 4. From test to test. Answering the same questions to different nurses. Staring at trays of food you don't even want to look at. For 2 full days I barely spoke. Not because I didn't want to, because my thoughts wouldn't line up. My mind felt like an old radio stuck between stations, catching broken bits of noise but never landing on anything clear. On the 3rd day, everything shifted. My family walked in. Daniel carried Ethan on his hip. Chloe clutched a teddy bear to her chest like a shield. The second I saw them in the doorway, it was like a heavy fog lifted. "Mom!" Ethan shouted and launched himself across the room. He wrapped himself around my legs, then my waist, and finally, even though he wasn't supposed to, climbed right onto the bed. "You still smell like home," he murmured, tucking his face into my shoulder. Chloe hovered at the foot of the bed, studying me with those 2 wise eyes. When I opened my arms, she finally stepped forward and folded into me. "You're skinnier," she whispered. "But your eyes look the same." That made me laugh and cry at the same time. For the first time since the diagnosis, I felt it again. I was still there, Mom. Daniel laid my favorite pajamas at the end of the bed and slid one of our pillows under my head. "So it won't smell like a hospital anymore," he said with a crooked smile. They stayed for an hour. Then another half. Ethan didn't want to leave. Chloe promised she'd write me letters. Daniel held my hand until he had to go. "We'll come back tomorrow," he said quietly. "Okay," I whispered, watching my whole world walk out of the room. And true to his word, they came back the next day. But this time she came with them. Megan. I wasn't shocked, just a little thrown. Honestly, part of me felt relieved. She swept into the room with coffee, flowers, a folder of Chloe's drawings, and a box of my favorite cookies. "Well, superstar," she said brightly. "Have you driven the nurses crazy yet?" "Only the orderlies," I joked. Apparently, I asked too many questions. For a moment, it felt like the old days, like nothing dark was hiding under any of this. Megan settled into the chair across from me and slipped straight into storytelling mode. Neighborhood gossip, parking nightmares at the mall, the dress Chloe chose for the talent show. "Oh, and I practiced with her yesterday," she added lightly. "We worked on her breathing. She's so bright, Han." And then Ethan asked me to read him a bedtime story. Can you believe it? I blinked. "You were at the house?" She shrugged, completely at ease. "Well, yeah. Daniel asked if I could hang with the kids while he ran to the store. You know me. I'm Megan." And she was. She was Megan, my best friend since forever. The woman who tucked my kids in before. Who knew exactly how Chloe liked her hair brushed. Who had a key to our house because it just made sense. Still, something inside me twitched. Like hearing a familiar song play just slightly off key. You can't explain why, but it bothers you. They came back the next day. And the day after that. And 2 days after that. Every time there was another cheerful update. Megan and I baked cupcakes. We played Monopoly with Aunt Megan. She let us eat dinner on the couch. Megan, Megan, Megan. Her name was stitched into every story. She was woven into their days, their routines, their memories, like she'd always been there. One evening, when it was just the 2 of us, I finally said it. "You spend a lot of time with them." "Of course," she replied easily. "Daniel's got his hands full, 2 kids, the housework." I'm just helping. And I love them, Han. Honestly, they feel almost like my own. She smiled and squeezed my hand, a gesture that had always comforted me. But this time it didn't land. The smile looked practiced, too smooth. I told myself I was tired, that I was overthinking, that she was doing what a good friend would do. I tried to smother the unease crawling slowly up my spine, but somewhere inside a quiet voice wouldn't let go. It kept whispering, "Look closer. Hospital time isn't real time. It stretches, bends, folds into itself. Days looping through 4 bags, blood tests, and long silences where your thoughts turn into knots you can't untangle." They began prepping me for the experimental treatment, new drug, new risks, new unknowns. I signed form after form, each signature feeling like I was handing over another small piece of the future I thought I would have. One afternoon, Dr. Lawson sat beside me and said quietly, "There is hope, a real chance, and in your case it could change everything." A spark lit inside me. But even hope casts a shadow because while I was here fighting to stay alive, my kids were out there learning to live without me. And that's when something shifted at home. Daniel stopped visiting on his own. First I made peace with it. 2 kids, a housework, it was a lot. And Megan was helping. But helping slowly became her routine. And soon, she was the one walking into my room holding my children's hands, sometimes without Daniel at all. "He's buried in work," she'd say lightly. I told him I'd bring the kids. "Everything's under control." And like a fool I nodded. I believed her, even though something inside me twisted tighter every time her voice filled the room. Ethan would run in glowing. "Mom, Aunt Megan and I baked cookies." She let me lick the spoon. Chloe was different, quieter, withdrawn. She'd curl into Megan's lap, whisper secrets in her ear, little stories I wasn't part of anymore. And slowly, painfully, it felt like their world was tilting toward her. Like the gravity that once pulled them to me was shifting, inch by inch, while I lay trapped in a hospital bed watching it happen. Then the slip started, small, almost invisible but sharp. Our breakfast. The kids' toaster Daniel bought. Our bedtime routine. It didn't sound like she was visiting. It sounded like she lived there. Like she belonged. So one afternoon I asked gently, "You've been at our place a lot lately, haven't you?" No hesitation. No guilt. Just a bright smile. "Oh, Hannah, don't make it weird. I'm close by, the kids adore me, and with everything going on they need me. It's totally normal. You're not jealous, are you?" Then she laughed, that breezy, practiced laugh that invites you to join in so you feel silly for even asking. But I didn't laugh. And the less I said, the more she slipped into the empty spaces of my life. Not filling them, replacing me. Taking my routines, my air, my place. That night, the pressure in my chest finally broke through and I texted Daniel. "I can't shake this feeling. Megan's spending too much time with the kids. Is everything okay?" His reply came instantly. "Hannah, she's just helping. The kids miss you and she's keeping them busy. You need to focus on getting better. Please don't let this spiral. It's the illness messing with your head." A punch straight to the lungs. Don't let this spiral. It's the illness. I had barely begun treatment, and already my concerns were being chalked up to paranoia, delusion, mental fog. I stared at the screen, my hand trembling around the phone. And for one terrifying moment, I wondered if they were right. Maybe my body falling apart was pulling my mind down with it. Maybe I was inventing dangers because everything else felt out of control. Maybe the shadows weren't real at all. So I shoved the doubts down. I told myself to trust the people I loved. Megan was my best friend. Daniel was my husband. And I was sick, fragile, not thinking clearly. This cloud would pass. Or at least that's what I needed to believe. But deep down, something whispered, "What if the cloud isn't in your head?" The next morning when they walked into my room, Megan cheerfully holding my kids' hands and Daniel smiling behind a bouquet of lilies, I slipped on my brightest mask. I laughed at Megan's story about Ethan confusing shampoo with shaving cream. I nodded when Daniel sighed about how overwhelming everything was. I even said, "Thank God Megan's an angel," because that's exactly what they expected to hear. But inside something cracked. Quietly. Precisely. Like a small branch finally bending past its limit. My instincts. My footing. My sense of being the center of my own family. They all started slipping inch by inch. And somewhere inside, a cold voice whispered, "You haven't seen the worst of it. Not even close." The first evening Daniel didn't come at all. I forced myself to be understanding. "Work's a mess," he texted. "I'm stuck on the quarterly report. Megan will bring the kids so they still get to see you, okay?" Okay. I stared at that tiny word far too long. It felt like a doorway into a version of my life where Megan delivered my children like packages, and Daniel stayed home without me. But again I agreed. Because what choice did I have? Megan arrived alone that evening. "No kids today," she said casually, setting a latte on my tray. "Ethan passed out in the car, and Chloe's a little under the weather. I didn't want to drag them around. Thought we could just chat." I swallowed the sting. "Maybe tomorrow you could bring them? I really miss them." She touched my arm gently, too gently. "Hannah, sweetheart, you need your strength. I'm with them all the time, they're fine. Chloe's drawing pictures for you, Ethan's creating some dinosaur superhero, and Daniel, well, he's exhausted. This is hard on him." I nodded, and nodded, and nodded. With each nod I felt myself fading a little more. Like someone slowly lowering the dimmer on who I was. Then I saw it. The chair. My chair. The one my kids always called Mom's throne. The one that sat in our bedroom for years. And there she was sitting in it. Legs crossed. Perfectly comfortable. She had dragged it into my hospital room, like it belonged to her. "That's my chair," I whispered. Megan smiled warmly, effortlessly. "Yeah, I thought you'd want something familiar. Kind of smells like home, right?" I watched her settle deeper into it. Too at ease. Too confident. Too present. Something twisted hard in my stomach. The next day only Chloe showed up. No Megan. No Ethan. "Where is everyone?" I asked, pulling her close. "Dad had to go to the store," she said softly. "Aunt Megan stayed with Ethan. Dad told me I'm old enough to come up first." "So he's here." Chloe nodded, but her eyes never lifted off the floor. "He's parking the car. He'll come in soon." But she wasn't excited. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't relieved. She looked nervous. Like a child bracing for something she didn't have words for. Something wasn't right. Not with her. Not with home. Not with any of it. And that's when I knew. Whatever was happening behind my back, it was getting worse. It wasn't like Chloe to avoid my eyes. She was my blunt, honest kid. The one who told me when my makeup looked smudgy, or dinner tasted weird. But now she stood twisting the strap of her tiny purse like she was wringing fear out of it. "Sweetheart," I whispered, brushing her hair back. "Are you upset?" "No," she murmured. "Just tired." I pulled her into me. "You can tell me anything. Always. You know that, right?" She nodded but clung tighter, like she was afraid I'd slip away. Then she whispered, "Mom, I just want you to come home." I smiled through tears. "I want that too, baby. I'm trying." But after she left, the shift inside me sharpened. Everything I had ignored before now demanded to be seen. Megan started showing up more often than Daniel. When I texted him, she replied. She sent photos from Chloe's talent show. Photos he should have taken. And she captioned them, "Our girls." When I asked Daniel why I hadn't seen Ethan in almost a week, he said, "He's coughing. Didn't want to risk it." "So why didn't you come alone?" "Well, Megan was already there. She said she'd handle it." Megan said. Those two words turned into a blade, slicing deeper each time. Her opinions. Her decisions. Her voice. She wasn't helping anymore. She was stepping into my role piece by piece. And I felt myself slipping out of my own life. Not dying, disappearing. Chloe grew distant. Ethan didn't want to talk on the phone. Daniel sounded hollow, unfamiliar. And Megan? She was rooting herself deeper into my family every single day. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't illness. This wasn't fear. This was truth. She wasn't filling in for me. She was replacing me. Then, early one morning, the hospital called me in. Not because I was worse, but because something finally looked hopeful. The new treatment was working. My liver markers were climbing. The inflammation in my lungs was easing. "There's a real chance your body is responding," Dr. Lawson said. "But we need to continue the protocol." I'll need your partner's signature. Partner. I called Daniel. He promised to come first thing the next morning. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark. A chance to talk without Megan hovering. He arrived late, holding a coffee and a magazine like it was any regular Saturday. Traffic was insane, he said. But I'm here. We chatted small talk, all fluff and nothing, while he mentioned Megan running errands for the kids. Then Dr. Lawson walked in with the paperwork. Daniel stood. I'll sign these real quick. Didn't even get a sip of my coffee. He followed the doctor out. And that's when I saw it. His phone. On the nightstand. Buzzing. I didn't mean to look. I only reached to move it before it fell. But then it lit up. Megan Yellowheart. My heart slammed against my ribs. I told myself not to touch it. But my hand moved anyway. The screen was unlocked. And the messages hit like punches. It was the happiest night of my life. I can still hear you whispering my name. You said you loved me. Say it again when you get back. I miss you. Can I stay another night? The kids are used to it. I'm part of your family. My family. She wasn't pretending anymore. She truly believed she'd already taken my place. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to move. Because in that moment, the truth was undeniable. She hadn't been helping me. She'd been replacing me. And Daniel, he'd let her. The world didn't just crack. It collapsed inward. My heart didn't beat, it roared. Each message carved through me like a hot blade, slicing straight through the life I thought was solid. My marriage, my trust, my home. My best friend. My husband. Together. It wasn't a guess. It wasn't anxiety. It wasn't my illness twisting reality. It was proof. I set his phone down the moment I heard footsteps in the hall. My face went blank instantly, smooth, empty, practiced. Daniel walked in wearing that familiar smile I once felt safe under. All signed, he said lightly. I'll head out. I'll bring the kids later. Ethan misses you so much. Okay, I replied, perfectly even. Can't wait. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. And the second his skin touched mine, something inside me recoiled. His affection felt wrong. Contaminated. Like it belonged to someone else now. When he left, the room didn't spin or blur like in movies. It just went flat. Colorless. Soundless. Still. I sat frozen for what felt like 40 minutes, maybe longer. Staring at the wall, the nightstand, my own shaking hands. I couldn't move. Couldn't swallow. Couldn't think past the ringing in my ears. Because now it was real. Not fear. Not paranoia. Not lupus distorting my mind. Truth. After he walked out and left the door half open, after leaving the ruins of our life glowing on the nightstand, something inside me went terrifyingly quiet. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't break. I shut down. Completely detached from my body, from the bed, from everything I thought I knew. This couldn't be happening. Not Megan, my Megan. The woman I trusted with everything. The one I comforted through her divorce. The one who told me I was the only person who really understood her. We shared secrets. Laughed over trash TV. She held my babies when they were born. And Daniel, the man who kissed me goodnight 10,000 times, who promised, it's you and me. Always. No. No, no, no. I whispered it like a prayer, like a spell, like something that could reverse what I'd seen. But the truth sat heavy on my chest. I stared at the ceiling, at the 4 taped to my arm, at Ethan's stuffed dinosaur Rex, perched on the nightstand with his soft-stitched eyes watching over me. But for the first time, even Rex couldn't comfort me. Because this wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. None of it felt real anymore. It was like I'd slipped out of my own skin and fallen into someone else's nightmare. Someone who only looked like me. A part of me wanted to disappear into that hospital bed. Stop thinking. Stop feeling. Stop existing. Because this wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just cheating. It was erasure. They were building a life together. In my house with my children, using my routines, wearing my memories like they belonged to them. And he let her. I buried my face in the pillow and whispered into the fabric. Oh God, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? Time dissolved after that. Hours passed like water slipping through my fingers. I didn't remember the nurse bringing meds. Didn't remember the 4 change. Didn't remember nodding, smiling, thanking. But apparently my body kept functioning. Performing. Pretending. While everything inside me collapsed into something thick and dark and suffocating. It felt like madness. Like I wasn't living my life anymore. Just watching a slow, cruel film about a woman whose heart was carved out when she wasn't looking. And that woman was me. Fear didn't sit beside me, it gnawed at me. What would happen to my kids? What if he turned them against me? What if Megan told people I was unstable, unfit, lost in my illness? What if they locked me out of my own home, out of their lives? I couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. Didn't know who to call or how to untangle any of this. All I had was shock. And betrayal so deep it swallowed every other feeling whole. By evening, through all the static in my head, one name finally surfaced. Rachel. My hand shook as I dialed her number. Hannah? She answered immediately, voice warm and tight with worry. Oh my God, where have you been? How are you? I took several seconds just to force air into my lungs. They're together, I whispered. Daniel and Megan. I saw the messages. She wrote about the night they spent together. About being happy. About the kids getting used to her. There was one heavy beat of silence. Then, oh, Hannah honey, I'm so sorry. How are you holding up? Like I'm dead, I said quietly. Just not buried yet. My throat tightened. I don't know how to live through this. I don't even know how to breathe. You don't have to, she said firmly. This isn't the moment to be strong. This is the moment to survive. We'll figure out everything else later together. That was it. That cracked something inside me open. Not into screams. Not into sobs. Just quiet tears slipping down my cheeks, finally breaking through the dam. I'm scared, I whispered. Scared of losing my kids. Scared no one will believe me. Scared everyone will think the illness twisted my mind. Scared they've already replaced me. Rachel didn't hesitate. Listen. You're not facing this alone. I know someone, a tech guy. Very discreet. Security background. He can help us see what's actually happening inside your house. Just information. Quietly. I'm not letting anyone erase you. Not on my watch. I sucked in a breath, deep, painful, real. I wasn't strong. Not even close. But something shifted. A tiny crack in the darkness where a sliver of light finally pushed through. I wasn't afraid for my health anymore. I was afraid for my sanity, for whatever pieces of myself I still had left. So I agreed to Rachel's plan. Not because I felt brave, but because lying in that bed wondering if I imagined everything was worse than any truth. And I needed the truth, no matter what it destroyed. When Ryan, Rachel's cybersecurity contact, agreed to help, it felt like grabbing a rope in the middle of a storm. It'll be quiet, he said. Invisible. No one will know. Few hidden mics. You choose when to listen. My stomach twisted at the thought of a stranger stepping into my home. But the thought of not knowing what was happening inside it without me? Much worse. I gave him the backdoor code. Told him when Megan usually took the kids out. 2 days later, the first recordings arrived. My hand shook so violently I could barely tap play. First, just background life. Dishes. Laughter. Footsteps. Then Daniel's voice. She didn't call today. That's good, Megan replied. Maybe she's finally accepting it. We can't live in limbo. And the kids adore me. They need stability. I'm worried that when she comes home, everything will go back. The guilt, the pressure. She won't be home long, Megan said casually. With that illness? You said yourself it's a matter of time. She can barely stay awake. Megan, I love you. And the children are our future. I'm their mother now. You know I am. A rustle. A shift of movement. Then the unmistakable sound of a kiss, slow, intimate, confident. My fingers went numb around the phone. But still no tears. Not now. Because for the first time I wasn't guessing or doubting. It wasn't fear. It wasn't my illness playing tricks. It was truth. They weren't waiting for me. They weren't confused. They weren't slipping. They had already built a life together, while I was fighting for mine. The second recording began. And somehow it was worse. Megan's voice sharp, irritated, cruel. Chloe's whining again about missing her mom. I'm done with it. She needs to grow up. This is her life now. I'm her family. If she keeps crying, I won't take her to the hospital anymore. She's young. She'll forget. Then Daniel, quiet, pathetic. Don't say that. No outrage. No defense of his daughter. Just emptiness. I lay in that hospital bed, listening to them destroy the world I built, and something inside me went still. A dangerous cold stillness that comes only after a storm has ripped everything down. And the truth settled deep into my bones. This wasn't betrayal. This was war. A fight for my life. For my kids. For the pieces of myself they thought they could overwrite. And I wasn't losing. Mrs. Jennings, my lawyer with the voice of a judge and the spine of steel, didn't waste time. We need a psychological evaluation, she said. Independent. If he even tries to paint you as unstable, we shut it down. So I went. 3 sessions. 3 hours of trembling hands and a heart still half in shock. And despite everything inside me twisting, patient is fully oriented, emotionally grounded and thinking clearly. That report became armor on my skin. But truth, real truth, would be the sword. Recordings weren't enough. Screenshots weren't enough. I needed to hear from the only voices that mattered most. My children. So I texted Daniel. I want to see them. Then added one more line. Bring them yourself. Without Megan. He tried to argue, insisting Megan was just trying to help. I answered with one word. Without. And he finally agreed. I spread a blanket over the hospital bed, set out juice and cookies. Anything to make that sterile room feel even a little like home. When they walked in, Ethan ran straight into my arms, squeezing my neck so tightly it hurt. Mom, you smell like you used to. I almost broke. But Chloe, she hovered at the foot of the bed, eyes lowered, shoulders tight, like she didn't know if she was allowed to move toward me. Hey, sweetheart, I whispered, patting the bed. Come sit with me. Daniel mumbled something about grabbing chocolate and slipped out. And suddenly it was just us, me and the 2 little souls I would burn the world for. I looked at Chloe, really looked, and saw fear sitting in her eyes like a secret she'd been forced to swallow. Chloe, I whispered, voice trembling. I know something's wrong. Please tell me. Her head fell. Her fingers twisted the pillowcase. A long aching silence. Then, I can't. Why not, baby? She swallowed hard. Aunt Megan said, if I tell you anything, I'll never see you again. My heart stopped. I gently cupped her face. Sweetheart, listen to me. That will never happen. No one can take you from me. Ever. Whatever you say stays between us. I promise. Her eyes filled instantly. She lives with us now, she whispered. In your room. She says she's in charge. She gets mad if we talk about you. She says you're not coming back. My breath caught. Does she hurt you? A tiny nod. Small. Terrified. Enough to shatter me. When Dad's gone, she yells. And when he comes home, she pretends nothing happened. I felt sick. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because, she said, if Dad got mad, he'd leave us too. I pulled her into my arms and held her like I could shield her from everything she'd lived through. I'm here, I whispered into her hair. I'm not going anywhere. No one will ever silence you again. Right then, something inside me shifted. A line snapped and fear lost its grip on me. Chloe had spoken her truth. Now it was my turn to act. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of panic, but because for the first time in weeks my mind was clear. Everything Chloe said confirmed what my instincts had been screaming. Silence wasn't strength anymore. Silence would be betrayal. The next morning I filed for divorce. Mrs. Jennings, my sharp-eyed, steel-spined lawyer, moved like she'd been preparing for this case her entire life. Psych evaluations. Recordings. Medical reports. A timeline of every cruel, calculated thing they had done. Daniel had no idea. And I wanted him to hear it at the exact right moment. Around that time, the doctors told me I could go home 2 weeks early. My numbers were improving. My body was fighting. I asked them not to tell anyone. Not Daniel. Not Megan. Not even the kids. I needed to see the truth with my own eyes, not the version they spoon-fed me. When I stood in front of my house again, my hands shook so badly the keys rattled. They still worked. But the life behind that door, that hadn't belonged to me for a long time. I stepped inside quietly. The kitchen light was on. Soft music played. And then laughter. Megan's laughter. I moved a little closer and froze. Candles glowed on the table. 2 wine glasses. Dinner plated neatly. And Megan wearing my blouse. The one I tossed into the hamper the day I collapsed. Daniel poured her more wine. And she rested her hand on his like they were the married couple. They didn't even notice me standing there. "It'll be fine," Megan murmured. "We're basically a family already. A little more time and it'll be official. Her condition isn't improving anyway. And the kids, they're mine now." "Megan," Daniel's voice cracked. "I just don't want to lose." "You already lost her," she said, smooth as poison. "And that's how it should be. She's weak. We're strong." That was my cue. "Oh, really?" I said, stepping forward. My voice was calm, too calm, slicing through the room like cold metal. Megan jolted. Daniel spun so fast he dropped his glass, shattering it across the floor. "Hannah?" "How?" I held up an envelope and a thick folder. "Relax. I won't stay long. I just came to give you these." I tossed the envelope toward him and set the folder down between the candles. "Recordings of your little conversations. Your plans for my children. Your activities while I was hooked to IVs. And one more thing, my psych evaluation. And the divorce papers." Megan's face drained to white. Daniel's mouth opened, but nothing came out. "You erased me while I was fighting for my life," I whispered. "Now it's my turn." I went upstairs. Chloe and Ethan were asleep, innocent, untouched by the darkness downstairs. I packed pajamas, a few toys, their favorite book. When I came back down, Daniel was standing in the hallway like someone had unplugged him. "No," I said, raising a hand before he could speak. "Not a word. Not in front of them." And just like that, we left. I didn't look back. I never imagined I'd sit in a courtroom holding my daughter's hand, while the man I slow danced with at our wedding, and the woman who once called me sister, sat across the aisle like strangers. After leaving the house, the kids and I stayed in a small hotel. 2 beds, a little table, warm yellow lights, nothing fancy. But it was safe. It was ours. Chloe drew hearts on the fogged window and wrote, "I read Heart Mom." Ethan built pillow forts and called them castles, asking if dragons were allowed. I told them it was temporary. But the truth? I had no idea how long this war would last. The hearing was scheduled quickly. In my filing I asked for full custody, the house, a help with medical bills, and a court order banning Megan from my children. Mrs. Jennings met my eyes and said, "We're not just proving betrayal. We're proving psychological manipulation, emotional abuse." I nodded. They tried to erase me, but I'm still here. On the morning of the hearing, I walked in wearing a plain dark coat. No makeup, no jewelry. Nothing to soften. Nothing to distract. I felt strong not because I looked strong, but because I hadn't run. Not this time. Inside the courtroom they were already seated. Megan looked polished in a beige suit, wearing a soft smile, like this was nothing more than a small, unfortunate misunderstanding. Daniel didn't lift his eyes once. Not when I walked past him. Not even when my name was called. When I took the stand I didn't shake. I didn't rush. I just told the truth. Calm. Steady. Undeniable. I spoke about the treatment, the exhaustion, the fear of being separated from my children. I explained how Megan's help had twisted into control. How she slid into routines, silenced Chloe, manipulated Ethan, and tried to carve me out of my own life one small piece at a time. Then came the evidence. Medical reports. Letters. Recordings. Each audio clip cracked through the room like thunder. With every quiet confession, every whispered plan, every cruel comment, Megan's smile melted. Daniel kept staring at the floor, shrinking deeper and deeper into himself. When it was their turn they had almost nothing. Daniel mumbled, "I was overwhelmed. I didn't mean for anything to happen." Megan softened her tone to sugar. "I was only trying to help. The children needed a woman around. If I was too strict, I'm sorry, but I'm not their mother." The judge cut her off sharply. "No, you are not their mother. And you had absolutely no right to behave as though you were. This court will not allow adults to damage the emotional well-being of children, because of their personal chaos. Silence fell. Even Daniel flinched. 2 weeks later, the ruling arrived. Full custody mine. The house mine. Daniel, responsible for financial support. And Megan barred from any contact unless I allowed it. I didn't cry. I just sat on the hotel bed, pulled Ethan close, and Chloe whispered, "Mom, does this mean we're really going home?" "Yes," I said. "We are." It wasn't the end of every problem, but the battle that mattered most? I won. And in my children's eyes, I was exactly who I had always been. Their mom. Their only mom. Their real mom. 6 months passed. The house slowly became ours again. I changed the curtains, repainted my room, threw away every single thing Megan ever brought inside. Not redecorating, reclaiming. Ethan started laughing in his sleep again. Chloe stopped watching the doorway every time I stepped out of the room. And me? I learned how to breathe again. Not perfectly. Not every day. But enough. My checkups stayed steady. Every visit, Dr. Lawson, the doctor who first said lupus, watched my numbers rise with quiet pride. "Your liver's a fighter," he said once. "But honestly, you're tougher." I laughed. It didn't feel like toughness. It felt like the only choice. Once, after an appointment, he helped Ethan button his tiny jacket. Chloe tugged my sleeve. "Mom, is that the doctor who saved you?" "Yes, sweetheart. He's nice. Can you be friends with him?" Her timing always perfect. I smiled. "We'll see, honey." When I glanced at him, he laughed softly, and I couldn't help laughing too. It started slowly. A few conversations after appointments, coffee, a handful of texts, eventually dinner. Nothing rushed. Nothing dramatic. Nothing painful. Just something steady. Something honest. Something gentle. Something I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. And I had no idea how much more my story still had to give. He never poked at my wounds or asked questions just to satisfy curiosity. He never tried to fix me or rescue me. He simply existed beside me. Steady, quiet, patient. And after everything I'd been through, just being felt like the safest place on earth. Then one afternoon, out of nowhere, Daniel appeared. The kids and I were walking back from the park when I saw his car parked in front of the house. "Hi," he said softly as I stepped onto the porch. "Is something wrong?" "No," he murmured. "I just wanted to see them." "It's not your day, Daniel. We have a schedule." I kept my voice even. "Today isn't one of your days." His eyes dropped. "Hannah," his voice cracked. "I ruined everything." I stood still, Chloe leaning against my side, Ethan gripping my fingers like I might disappear. "She left," he said. "Megan. She's gone. She said what we had was just an impulse. A mistake." He swallowed hard. "And now I'm alone. And I finally see that everything real, everything good, I destroyed." He tried to meet my eyes. I turned slightly away. "Daniel," I said gently, "you didn't just break our marriage. You broke me. Not with anger, with truth. I forgave you for my peace. But you don't get a place in my life anymore." He opened his mouth, maybe to beg or apologize, but I didn't let him. "All you need to do is be a good father. Show up when you're supposed to. Bring them home on time. That's it." Then I closed the door. No yelling. No tears. Just closure, the sweetest kind. 1 year passed. I woke up at 6:47 a.m. Not from fear, nightmares, or alarms. I woke up because I wanted to. Morning sun slid through the curtains like warm honey. Chloe sat at the kitchen table, sweater inside out, coloring with fierce concentration. Ethan, still in pajamas, whispered secrets to his stuffed lion. I stood in the doorway holding my coffee and realized something simple and enormous. I was happy, not because everything was perfect, but because everything finally belonged to me again. I think back to the hospital room sometimes, the beeping machines, the fear swallowing me whole. Back then, I truly believed I would never stand again. Never feel normal. Never feel alive. But I did. Not gracefully. Not like a movie hero. I stumbled, collapsed, crawled, and slowly learned to stand. Then I learned to fight, for myself, for my kids, for the truth. Lupus doesn't hover over me like a storm cloud anymore. I manage it. I follow the treatments. I live fully. Every morning feels like a small kind of freedom. And Lawson? He isn't just my doctor anymore. We don't label it. We don't rush it. We don't need to. He comes over for dinner sometimes. He sits on the floor playing dinosaurs with Ethan. He reads Chloe her favorite bedtime stories. Sometimes we sit side by side on the couch, fingers intertwined, saying nothing at all. I don't know where it will lead, but for the first time, I'm not afraid of uncertainty. Daniel still sees the kids on his scheduled days. He's quieter now, older somehow, like life finally caught up to him. I don't hate him. I don't love him. He is simply the father of my children, and that is the only place he holds in my story. I wish him peace. And I thank him for one thing only. Our children. Everything else worth keeping, I rebuilt myself. This morning Chloe handed me a small card she made. In her crooked handwriting it read, "Thank you for coming back to us." And for the first time in a very long time, I believed I truly had. Maybe that's what healing really is. Not returning to who you were, but becoming someone you never imagined you could be. Mom, you are my hero. You didn't cry when it hurt. You were with me. And you always will be. This time when I cried, it wasn't from pain. It was gratitude, deep, quiet, overflowing. I had walked through hell. And somehow I didn't lose myself. No, I found myself again. That evening, I placed Chloe's card on the fridge, right beside Ethan's school photo and her newest drawing. Then I stepped back and looked at the wall. Bright, messy, alive with color and fingerprints of the life I'd fought to reclaim. And for the first time in years, the house felt whole. No shadows. No strangers. No whispered threats slipping through hallways. No dread curling beneath my ribs. Just us. Just home. And maybe that's the quiet miracle no one talks about, that after everything, peace doesn't shout. It simply returns, sits beside you, and stays.